there! Welcome to the Willamette Valley. The name Willamette is believed to come from the KAHOOT Indian phrase meaning west bank. However, it might also be from the KAHOOT phrase Willamette, which is thought to mean where the river ripples and runs fast. Let's take a look at the boundaries of the Willamette Valley Ecoregion. At its northern boundary, you'll find the Columbia River, which divides Oregon and Washington state. The main northernmost city is Portland. However, a small sliver of the northwestern boundary bumps up against the Coast Range Mountains ecoregion. Along the Willamette Valley's western boundary, you'll find the Coast Range Mountains. And moving way out east to the eastern boundary, you'll find that the eastern boundary is where the Willamette Valley's foothills turn into the Cascade Mountains ecoregion. Additionally, much of the Willamette Valley's southwestern corner bumps up against the Cascade Coast Range Mountains ecoregion. The Willamette Valley's ecoregion continues south from Portland to the region's southern boundary, and its southernmost city is Cottage Grove. There you'll find that the southern border is made up of the Klamath Mountains ecoregion. Hey there! Welcome to the Erratic State National Recreation Area. This is a rock in the center of the Willamette Valley. We're here in Yamhill County, Oregon, and this is the Erratic Rock. Let's learn a little bit about this rock. How did this rock get here? Pretty solid to me, pretty heavy. They think this rock weighs over 70 tons, and at one point it might have even weighed 160 tons. However, it probably lost over 60 tons of weight or 100 tons of weight because of people chunking off little pieces. There must be something special about it. Special about where it came from. Way over there, over those mountains. This rock traveled hundreds of miles at speeds up to 60 miles per hour in the Ice Age floods. Let's learn a little bit more about the Ice Age floods. How did this huge rock get here? Well, look no further than this huge event called the Missoula floods. These occurred when a glacial ice dam broke near what is Missoula, Montana today. And then huge floodwaters with floodwaters 300 to 400 feet high went racing through eastern Washington, through the Columbia River Gorge, and on their way west until they got to Portland. There in Portland, those floodwaters went south in the Willamette Valley. Those floodwaters carried tons of dirt and sediment, and it dropped it in the Willamette Valley, creating great farm soil today. Also carried in those floods were huge granite boulders. How did those boulders get here? They floated in massive icebergs. So when those icebergs got here to the Willamette Valley and melted, those huge granite boulders dropped out. That's what you're looking at right here. This is a granite boulder that dropped out of an iceberg and is evidence of those Missoula floods. Native Americans have lived in the Willamette Valley since from about 6,000 to 10,000 years ago up until the present. Members of these tribes do continue to live in the region today. Until recently, the population of the valley was largely made up of bands of the Kalapuya tribe. The Kalapuya tribal group was the biggest Native American tribal group in the Willamette Valley ecoregion. The Kalapuyan traditional homelands were the Willamette, Elk Creek, and Kalapuya Creek watersheds in the Willamette Valley. Pretty much anything in this Willamette Valley, in the main valley, were the traditional homelands of the Kalapuya. So the whole entire Willamette Valley made up their homelands. They hunted and gathered as far east as the Cascade Mountains and as far west as the Coast Range. And they traded with the Chinookians to the north and the tribes on the coast. Their major tribes were the Tualatin, Yamhill, and Athontuyuk in the northern areas. And in the Central Valley, the Santiam, Lukamut, Shinnepinefu, And down in the southern part of the Willamette Valley were the Calpullian tribes Chimafo, Chehalima, Chaffin, Paiute, also known as the Mohawk, and Winefeli, along with the Long Tom. Way down in the southern part of the Willamette Valley is the homeland of the Yoncalla tribe, which had a village on the Roe River and villages in the Umpqua Valley, meaning the Yoncalla tribe lived in the Umpqua Valley and Willamette Valley, aka the Yoncalla tribe lived in both the Klamath Mountains ecoregion and the Willamette Valley ecoregion. Major tribal territories were divided by the Willamette River, which is right here behind me, and its tributaries, aka rivers and creeks that flow into it. It is estimated that 16,000 Calpullians lived in the valley in the early 1800s, but as many as 90% of the Calpullia people may have died as a result of malaria that hit the area between 1830 and 1833. Salmon, deer, camas bulbs, and more provided the food sources for these first peoples. And they also used fire to help develop and keep the oak savanna habitat. Oak trees have been another important food source in the form of acorns, which were leached, cooked, and eaten by the native peoples. It is important to note that not all the tribes in the region were part of the Calpullian Indian group. In the very northern part of the Willamette Valley, way up by Portland and along the Columbia River Gorge, were the Chinook peoples, which consisted of the Multnomah and Clackamas tribes. Multnomah villages were located throughout the Portland Basin and on both sides of the Columbia River. This isn't the Columbia, this is the Willamette over here. However, the Multnomah people primarily settled on and around Suavy Island, up in Portland, or what was called by them the Wadaputu Island, as the Native Americans called that island. One of the large villages was Cathalatopol and was located in what is Clark County in Washington State, where the Lewis River and the Columbia River meet up. The village Cathalatopol was visited by Lewis and Clark's expedition in 1805, and according to their journals, Lewis and Clark found 14 houses in the village, most of them ranging from about 14 to 20 by 20 feet and 40 by 100 feet. Lewis and Clark reported that about 900 people lived in the villages, and that the Multnomah diet included mostly salmon, eels, sturgeon, elk, and water birds, and especially wadapato, an edible water plant that produces potato-like tubers underwater. The Clackamas tribe traditionally lived along the Clackamas River in the Willamette Valley. Lewis and Clark estimated that the Clackamas population was about 1,800 in 1806, and that they had 11 villages, and primarily lived on fish and roots. The other tribal group was the Malolos. The Molalla tribe lived in the Willamette Valley's eastern foothills, but mostly lived in the Cascade Mountains ecoregion. So when you're out here and you see lots of Native American names at places, that's because this land has been home to people for over 6 to maybe even 10,000 years. And those people are called the first people or Native Americans. So, this land, the Willamette Valley, belonged to the Native Americans for thousands of years. And many Native Americans still live here and call this place home today. Hey there! Did you know this place we call Oregon almost became part of Britain and what today is Canada? In the early 1800s, the only Americans and Europeans out here in what would become Oregon were people working for the fur trade. By 1805, the land was claimed by the United States, as well as Russia, Great Britain, and Spain, all at the same time. In 1818, the US and Britain signed a treaty that the two countries do it so peacefully. Eventually, in the 1830s, as more and more pioneer settlers began arriving in the Willamette Valley via the Oregon Trail, a decision needed to be made. Eventually, would it become part of Britain or would it become part of the United States? That decision was made during a set of meetings called the Champoeg meetings, which were held in 1841 to 1843. Dun 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 dun! What do you think happened? And they formed a government, and it eventually became part of the United States, and eventually Oregon. Back then, pioneer settlement in the Willamette Valley was originally centered in nearby Oregon City, which is about 13 miles north upriver that way. And in the early 1840s, a new settlement emerged about 10 miles south of the mouth of the Willamette River, where it meets up with the Columbia River, and that is about 10 miles that way, 10 miles north. So we're in that point right now. And this community was called Stumptown. Okay, 10 miles or so that way is Oregon City, 10 miles or so that way is the mouth. And we're where it was called Stumptown. And the clearing, because of the many trees that were cut down to allow for this area's growth. Imagine, over there, not a single tree, just a bunch of stumps. In 1843, William Overton saw lots of potential in the new settlement, but he didn't have enough money to file an official land claim for 25 cents. Imagine that, not having 25 cents. Well, to be honest, 25 cents in 1843 would be about $35 in today's money. So, tough luck, dude. For 25 cents, Overton agreed to share half of the 640-acre site with Asa Lovejoy of Boston. In 1845, Overton sold his remaining half of the claim to Francis Pettygrove of Portland, Maine. Hey there! Welcome to Portland, the biggest city in the Willamette Valley Ecoregion and also the biggest city in Oregon with over 650,000 people. Did you know that the city's name has its roots in something shiny? No, really. The history of the city of Portland began in 1843 when business partners William Overton and Asa Lovejoy filed a land claim on the west bank of the Willamette River in Oregon country in 1845. The name Portland was chosen for this community by a coin toss. Let's head on over to Oregon City to learn about that coin toss and how Portland got its name. The city of Portland's two founders, Francis Pettygrove from Portland, Maine, and Asa Lovejoy from Boston, Massachusetts, both wanted the small town site, then named the clearing, to be named after their respective hometowns. The coin toss that happened in 1845 took place in the parlor of the Ermatinger House, right here in Oregon City. I'm standing on the porch of the Ermatinger House right now. This is one of the oldest houses in Oregon, and it is now a museum. The coin toss that decided Portland's name happened in 1845, and it was two out of three tosses. Ultimately, Pettygrove won, and the city was named after Pettygrove's hometown, Portland, Maine. Portland was incorporated in 1851. And incorporated is a fancy word for saying Portland became an official city in 1851. Whatever happened to that coin that determined the name? Well, it's not in this place anymore. You'll find that coin in downtown Portland in the Oregon Historical Society Museum. It was minted in 1835, and then they found it after the coin toss in a safe deposit box that Lovejoy left after he died. Now it's on display in the Oregon Historical Society Museum in downtown Portland. Oh my goodness! What's going on? What's this thing? What's this thing right here? Let me try and give it another go. What is this thing? What is this thing right here? I can't get through. I can't get through it. What is it? Ugh! Oh, hey there, you must be the urban growth boundary. Let's learn a little bit about the urban growth boundaries. As we learned, the Willamette Valley is where 3 out of 4 Oregonians live, and it is growing a population all the time. Let's learn about the urban growth boundary, a part of Oregon's statewide land use planning program. In the late 1960s, Oregon Governor Tom McCall raised alarm that the Willamette Valley would become a sprawling set of suburbs that would eventually replace most farm and forest land in the region. In 1973, when the Oregon legislature passed the Oregon Land Use Act, they passed Senate Bill 100. Under Oregon law, each of the state's cities and metropolitan areas has created an urban growth boundary around its perimeter. Simply put, the urban growth boundary is a land use planning line to control urban, aka city expansion onto farm and forest lands. Land inside the urban growth boundary supports urban, aka city services such as roads, water and sewer systems, parks, schools, and fire and police protection. The boundary is one of the tools to protect farms and forests from urban sprawl and promote the efficient use of land, public facilities, and services inside the boundary. Every 6 years, each city government must review and report on the land supply in the Urban Growth Report. The cities prepare a forecast of population and employment growth for the region for the next 20 years. And, if necessary, they adjust the boundary to meet the needs of the growth forecast for that 20-year period. So, look right there. This is where the urban growth boundary ends and the countryside begins. So our city's that way, and this way we have left the city. So what's that little line around the city that stops it from growing forever? The urban growth boundary. Ah! Look at all those people. Hey there, today we are exploring the Willamette Valley, which is both the fastest growing ecoregion in Oregon and the most densely populated, aka all this means is that this region has the most people and more people are moving here and being born, aka the population keeps going up here. The Willamette Valley is where you'll find the 3 largest urban centers, and urban means related to a city. These 3 largest urban centers include Portland, Salem, and Eugene. At least 70%, aka about 30 million of the 4.2 million Oregonians live in the Willamette Valley. And by 2050, the population is expected to grow by about 4 million people. 4 million by 2050. So let's take a look at the major cities in the Willamette Valley. The biggest city is Portland, right over here and all around me, which is also the northernmost city in the ecoregion. Portland has a population of about 650,000 people. The next biggest city is Salem, Oregon's capital city, with a population of about 175,000 people. Next we have Eugene, with 170,000 people. Go Ducks! After Portland, Salem, and Eugene, there are only 3 other cities with more than 70,000 people, and both of these cities are up in the Portland area. These are Gresham with 110,000 people, Hillsboro with 109,000 people, and Beaverton with 99,000 people. Next, we have a group of cities with a population of over 30,000 people. We have Springfield with 63,000, Corvallis with 58,000, go Beavers! Albany with 55,000, Tigard with 55,000, Lake Oswego with 39,000, and also Kaiser with 39,000. Then we have Oregon City with 37,000 and McMinnville with 34,000. Whoa! Geez, I need to take a breather saying all those cities. But there are still 21 cities in the Willamette Valley with more than 3,000 people. So, where are all the people in Oregon? They're along this area called the Willamette Valley. Hey there, I'm Gordon the Steamboat. Wouldn't you know it, looking out there today, but historically, the rivers were the original highways here in the Willamette Valley. Beginning in the 1850s, steamboats began to use the Willamette River as a mode of transportation, but they could not pass the Willamette Falls in Oregon City. Because of this, the Willamette River was divided into two stretches. The 27-mile lower stretch from Portland to Oregon City, which allowed the Willamette River to connect to the Columbia River boat system, and the upper reach, which was the rest of the Willamette River south of Oregon City. And both of these river segments were connected in 1873 when the Willamette Falls locks opened in Oregon City and allowed ships to travel through the Willamette Falls safely. So, I am pretending to be an old steamboat. Look down here at one of those stern wheelers. Those wheels that keep on paddling and chugging that river up and down. Imagine back in the day before all these roads existed that you would be on one of these steamboats chugging up and down the Willamette River, aka the highway of the past. Toot toot. So where does all that rain and water go? Well, it doesn't just sit around lying about. Most of it flows into the Willamette Valley Ecoregion's rivers and watersheds. Major rivers in the Willamette Valley include the Willamette River, the McKenzie River, Santiam River, Sandy River, Molalla River, Clackamas River, Tualatin River, Yamhill River, Lukamoot River, and the Long Tom River. All rivers and watersheds in the Willamette Valley flow into the Willamette River, which I'm looking at right here. And the Willamette River is part of the Columbia River watershed. Eventually, the water right here will flow out into the Pacific Ocean through the Columbia River, which this river, the Willamette River, merges with in Portland. Let's go swimming and jump in and find out. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. I'm a fishy and I'm swimming. This little fishy swimming, this little fishy swimming. Hey there! Here we are in Oregon City at the Willamette Falls. It is the largest waterfall in the northwestern United States and the 16th largest waterfall by volume in the world. Native American legend has it that these falls were placed here by the great God so that people would have fish to eat all winter long. Native Americans continue to fish here at a fishing platform here at Willamette Falls. And they catch salmon and collect lamprey down there in those falls, mostly during the summer season. European fur traders visited the falls for the first time in 1810. In 1829, Dr. John McLaughlin, who is also called the father of Oregon for helping American pioneers settle the region, established land claims at the falls. Oregon City is on the east shore of the Willamette River, which the Willamette Falls is caused by, and was founded in 1843. For about 10 years, Oregon City was the biggest city in Oregon until Portland started to take off in the 1850s. If you're using electricity today, which I'm guessing you're using since you're watching this on some sort of device, then you might be interested in learning that this site right here was where the first long-distance transmission of electricity occurred in the United States. In 1889, electricity was generated at a power mill down there, where the water went through a turbine, generating electricity, and then it flowed about 10 miles north of here to Portland. So the first long-distance transmission of electricity in the United States happened in 1889 right here in Oregon City. And the power was generated here at the Willamette Falls and went about 10 miles north to Portland, Oregon. So let's take a look at these amazing falls from the air. Or should I say, yeehaw! Oh, hey there! Until the 1900s, the primary modes of transportation in the Willamette Valley was on foot, aka walking, horse, train, or boat. Today, the main mode of transportation is by motor vehicles, aka cars and trucks. Oh yeah! Don't forget those motorcycles. With more people living here than any other ecoregion, the Willamette Valley has thousands of miles of roads. In fact, there are over 2,000 centerline miles of streets in the city of Portland alone. Oregon's most traveled road, right behind me here, is called Interstate 5. aka I-5, and it runs the entire north-south length of the Willamette Valley, passing through Portland, Salem, Albany, Eugene, Cottage Grove, and Cottage Grove. The other major north-south road routes, aka the odd-numbered roads, are Highway 99 West, and Highway 99 East. And these used to be some of the primary north-south roads before I-5 was finished in 1966. A smaller north-south route is Interstate 205, which connects Tualatin to Vancouver in Washington State. It helps transport much of the traffic in eastern parts of Portland. Major east-west routes, also known as the even-numbered routes, include Highway 26, which connects the region up to Seaside and the Mount Hood area. Highway 22 connects the region to the coast and the Cascade Mountains. Another highway, like Highway 22, is Highway 20, which goes from Newport through the Willamette Valley in the Corvallis area and then heads up into the Cascade Mountains too. There's one more road that's kind of like Highways 22 and 20. This is Oregon Route 126, which connects Eugene and Springfield to the coast and Cascade Mountains ecoregions. Smaller highways are Highway 30, Highway 18, OR 58, and many more state highways, county and city roads. And while most of all these roads in this region are paved, in the rural areas of the Willamette Valley, you will find many gravel roads, especially out in the farming areas. Look at the difference between Interstate 5, the biggest highway in the Willamette Valley, and this little county road. That's a big difference. Vroom, vroom, beep, beep. Let's go drive through the Willamette Valley. Beep, beep, vroom, vroom. They're coming to kidnap me. They're coming to kidnap me. I'm gonna get shanghaied. For much of the late 1800s, Portland was dominated by logging and was a rough and dangerous town. At the end of the 1800s, Portland was even considered one of the most dangerous port cities in the world. There were even trap doors on the other side of this river in downtown Portland where people could just be walking along and fall through into the trap doors, because the doors would open, you'd fall down, and you would be kidnapped and put on a ship. You would wake up in the middle of the night and you would be on a ship going to China. Imagine that, just going out for a walk, a trap door opening, you falling down and waking up on a ship going to China. They couldn't get enough people to work on the ships, so they would kidnap people in cities like downtown Portland. This was called shanghaiing. If you were shanghaied, that meant that you woke up on a ship going to China after being kidnapped in downtown Portland. In downtown Portland today, there are still tunnels from the shanghaiing days and also from the dark days of the dens underground. At the time Portland became a city in 1851, the city had just over 800 people. But between 1900 and 1930, Portland's population tripled from 100,000 people to 301,000 people. Since the 1990s to today, technology and business have been important parts of the economy and industry of Portland, and the area has grown significantly. Today, the city's population is over 650,000 people. But if you count the greater urban area, this area is home to about 1.88 million people. I need to learn to count. This is Portland, Oregon's biggest city. Hey there! Here we are at Portland International Airport, aka PDX. Look out there at those airplanes. This is Oregon's busiest airport, and it's the only international airport. Hey there, even though Medford calls itself an international airport, it's not really an international airport. Medford, watch what you call yourself. So this is Oregon's only international airport, and it's Portland International Airport, PDX. Here you'll find flights all over the United States to pretty much every single state in the United States. You'll also find flights to Mexico, Canada, Asia, and Europe. Look over there at all those airplanes. So we're here in the Willamette Valley at Oregon's busiest airport, Portland International Airport. The Willamette Valley Ecoregion is also home to Oregon's second largest busiest airport, the Eugene Airport. Way down in the valley that way in Eugene, Oregon. Go Ducks! Hey there! What do they say about the Willamette Valley? Well, that it rains all the time. Well, even though this ecoregion is not quite as wet as the Coast Range ecoregion or parts of the Cascade Mountains ecoregion, for much of the year it is often seeming like here that it's raining all the time and that the rain is never going to end. That's what it feels like for much of the year in the Willamette Valley. And actually, 164 days out of the year, it rains. The main features of the ecoregion's climate are moderate temperatures and frequent cloudiness and rains, except in summer, with generally sunny and warm weather. Winters are consistently wet and cloudy, and often foggy, but mild. Although night frosts are common, the temperature almost always rises above the freezing point in the daytime. Snow occurs on occasion, but accumulations are normally light, and in some winters, no snow falls at all. Hopefully that's not one of those winters right now when you're watching this. Very cold temperatures are unusual, with the temperature very rarely falling below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and readings of 5 degrees Fahrenheit or lower only happen about once every 25 years. Summers are characterized by warm, sunny afternoons with little or no humidity and cool evenings. Sometimes heat waves can occur, with temperatures rising above 90 degrees and occasionally even reaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit. But the nights usually bring relief. Air conditioning, aka opening the window. Precipitation, aka rain in this region, varies considerably across the valley and is closely connected with elevation. Annual, meaning yearly, totals range from 36 inches in the lowest elevations to more than 80 inches in the foothills. Eugene, at the southern end of the valley, is 425 feet above sea level and receives 46 inches of rain per year. And at its northern end of the valley, Portland is only about 50 feet above sea level and receives only 36 inches of rain. So, quite a range. Most rainfall occurs from October to May, and it tends to be heaviest between November and January, when disturbances coming from the Pacific Ocean are at their most intense point. Moo! Hey there! One of the main agricultural things in the Willamette Valley are dairy cows. So next time you're drinking a good cold glass of milk or having some sort of cereal thing or something made out of milk, these cows may have provided some of that delicious milk. Let's learn more about Oregon agriculture. Hey there! As you travel across the Willamette Valley ecoregion, you'll notice that farms make up a large percentage of the landscape. In the cool, moist climate of the Willamette Valley, over 170 different crop and livestock items are produced. Some of the top crops include grapes, nurseries, marionberries, hazelnuts, Christmas trees, black raspberries, cherries, apples, onions, beef cows, wheat, and many, many more delicious and nutritious crops, such as my favorite, broccoli. Hey there! Welcome! I'm here at a hazelnut orchard, and Oregon is the #1 producer of hazelnuts in the United States. Hazelnuts are a very important industry to the Willamette Valley. They grow because of our good soil, and here in Oregon, it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. But with hazelnuts, it's also quantity because we grow the most. Hazelnuts are a winter nut, and they fall down in the winter and they are vacuumed up with a big machine. Hazelnuts are also in many foods people like, Nutella, candies, and they can also be eaten raw as just a yummy nut. Over 8,000 acres of hazelnuts are planted every year in the Willamette Valley. It's a huge growing industry, and it's a very tasty one indeed. I'm here. This is what the old oak savanna used to look like. You can see the grass, and you can see the oaks up there. All the hills in Salem and other areas used to be like this. This is what the Willamette Valley used to look like. Hundreds of animal species call the Willamette Valley home. There are over 61 native species of mammals that currently or recently live or lived in the Willamette Valley ecoregion. Some of these include the bald eagle, the American beaver, the red-legged frog, red-tailed hawk, the red-winged blackbird, coyotes, western gray squirrels, and many more. The Willamette Valley is also home to an estimated 48 native bird species that feed and breed in the Willamette Valley grasslands. 15 of these bird species are experiencing significant population declines in western Oregon grasslands. And only 2 species, the common yellowthroat and the red-winged blackbird, are increasing in numbers. The Oregon Wildlife Institute estimated that 87 bird species feed and reproduce in the oak and Douglas fir woodlands in the Willamette Valley. A geographic study of the amphibians that are native here, this happened in 1983, found that 13 species are native to Willamette Valley. Some of these include the Oregon slender salamander, the northern red-legged frog, and many more. There are 15 native species of reptiles that occur in the valley, and all of them live close to the woodland habitats, and 14 of these reptile species also use the grasslands. And pockets of the western rattlesnake can be found in the mid to southern parts of the Willamette Valley. Watch out for those rattlers. Whoo! Did you know that gray wolves used to live in the Willamette Valley? But the last ones were killed off in the area in 1913 to 1914. Did you know that grizzly bears used to live here? And the last one was seen in 1845. The valley is also home to many important fish species. These include the Chinook salmon, the coho salmon, chum salmon, lamprey, steelhead, Oregon chub, bull trout, and many more fishies. Just keep swimming. Over behind me is what this valley used to look like before it was shaped by European and American settlers. The valley was largely oak savanna, and which means it had grassy areas with oak trees growing there too. Mostly that's what it was like. However, in the foothills you could also see Douglas fir trees. Those are those green, big, tall trees way, way far that way. So in the foothills, you would see a mix of oak and Douglas fir trees. And the closer you got to the edge of the Willamette Valley, the more of the evergreen, tall pine trees you would see. Hey there! Welcome to Basket Slough National Wildlife Refuge. This is a special place where animals such as birds, beavers, and a bunch of different animals can live here. They're protected so they have a nice place to live and they don't go extinct. This is what the Willamette Valley used to look like before Europeans settled it and turned most of the land into farms. You could see it was mostly a grassland, large plains, And there's also hills with oaks. So it's mostly an oak savanna in the valley floor where Salem and Corvallis and those places are. It was just an oak savanna, and the Native Americans would set fire to the forest floor, or not the forest floor, the valley floor, and grasslands would burn and keep it clear. See, this is what the natural habitat looks like. Trees and clumps and mostly grassland. And mostly grasslands.